And going live. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for June 21st. First order of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance. Councilmember Gardner will lead us now.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day that you've given us, and we're so appreciative that we get to come together tonight and do the people's business, Father. We just ask for wisdom in all the things that we do and consider this evening, and we just pray for the city of Maumelle that we'll continue to prosper here, Lord, and that we'll continue to serve all of those that are in this city, and that we can always be looking for ways to help improve others' lives, Lord, and to reach out and to make someone's life better each and every day. Thank you for all those that continue to serve us each and every day and protect us and keep us safe here in the city. We're so thankful for all those that come to work here each day and make this a great place to live. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. We'll move on to special guests and announcements. Although it should be pretty apparent to everyone here, I'd like to welcome back Councilmember Ken Saunders.
May I say something?
You absolutely may, sir. If you wouldn't mind getting the mic down.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, sir.
City Council and others attending, I just want you to know I'm trying. That's why I came back tonight. I may not last the whole meeting, depending upon how long it lasts. My stamina is not what it used to be. I'm on some real good drugs. That's why I can even get here. And nothing illegal. But if I hit that point where my energy's gone and I know I can feel it coming, I can't sit straight back chairs. I'll probably get up and leave, and I want you all to know why. It's not that you made me mad. So, but it's getting better all the time, so I'll be back more.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you here. Next order of business is the approval of the June 6th regular meeting minutes. Y'all have a copy of that in your council packet. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes for June 6, 2022.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. I don't have any public comment cards, so we'll move on to the financial statement review. Ms. Mathis, come on down.
Good evening. I am plugged into the HDMI. What do you think? Possibly. There we go. Great. So we are taking a look at our May 2022 financial reports. And starting off looking at our general fund revenues, our county millage tax current year to date is $542,000 ahead of budget year to date, $28,000 less than the prior year. This is the one where the timing of the receipts, it's going to vary. We got that big payment in May. It'll trickle down a little bit. We'll get the biggest payments in October and November. Our franchise fees current year to date is $10,000 ahead of budget and $59,000 more than the prior year. Our state turnback funds are currently $21,000 ahead of budget year to date, or excuse me, behind budget year to date, and $61,000 more than the prior year. If you'll remember, the state's fiscal year ends in June, so we usually end up with an extra payment in July. So I expect that that'll probably happen, and we'll catch back up there because their fiscal year is different from ours. So, on our county sales tax, current year to date is $180,000 ahead of budget year to date, $247,000 more than the prior year. Our city sales tax is $7,000 ahead of budget year to date, $11,000 more than the previous year. Police department shows $122,000 behind budget year to date, $17,000 more than the previous year. we've got the timing of those quarterly PSAP payments, and then the lot fee turn back funds that come in July. So we'll look like we're under budget for the year until July. Same story in fire department. It's 103 behind budget year to date, 16,000 more than the prior year. And that'll change in July. Animal services, currently the year to date is $5,000 ahead of budget year to date, $9,000 more than the previous year. We did add some new revenue lines this year for adoption fees and donations. We actually added them to our general ledger late in 2021. But we did not bring you a budget amendment at that time because we didn't know how much to request an amendment for. So we're waiting until we have at least 6 months worth of data. Plan to bring a budget resolution forward in July for two different things. One would be for the adoption fees to go towards the increased medical expenses that the city has taken on by starting to handle the adoptions. And then the other part would be for the donations. And these donations we probably will do every 6 months or so ongoing, because you wouldn't want to appropriate money from donations that you don't know that you have. And so our thought was, we'll wait until those accumulate a little bit, bring forward an appropriation, and then allow the council to appropriate those funds to a particular expense line. We'll be talking with the Animal Services Department to find out where the most significant need is to try to appropriate those funds. And I expect that that's something that we would do ongoing. If we got a larger donation in, we would probably be more immediate with the resolution, and especially if a donor designated what they wanted it spent on, we would bring that information to the council. There is a state law, though, that says that donations have to be deposited into the general fund. So we can't just put it in a special fund and use it how the donors designate. It has to go to the general fund and be appropriated by the city council. So I believe we've set up some good tracking on that so that we have good information, and we'll be bringing that those resolutions to you in July once we have 6 months worth of data looking at the end of June. And Parks and Recreation, current fees year to date are $22,000 behind budget year to date, $22,000 more than the prior year. And Senior Center is $36,000 ahead of budget year to date and $48,000 more than the prior year. All of the other department revenues are ahead of or near to budget year to date and are ahead of the prior year. Overall revenues for the year are $937,000 ahead of the budget year to date and $802,000 more than the previous year. On expenditures, in most departments, they remain, let me change my slide there, below budget year to date other than citywide services, and we've talked about that for several months now. That's related to the timing of the various annual renewals that hit us at the beginning of the year. And then we've also talked about the fact that overall our expenses are expected to be higher because we budgeted them to be higher. So that column has looked that way since the beginning of the year and will continue to. The general fund balance as of the end of May, the fund balance is $4.7 million over the required minimum balance. The current year revenues are currently $321,000 more than the current year's expenses. And the unappropriated fund balance and the general fund related to the ARPA funds remains at $2.6 million. Switching over to our street fund. The county millage tax is $158,000 ahead of budget year to date, $8,000 less than the prior year. State turnback funds, $165,000 under budget year to date, $41,000 more than the prior year. And the street aid program is $20,000 ahead of budget year to date, $22,000 more than the prior year. We talked about timing on millage tax and turnback funds in the general fund. It's the same here in the street fund. Those kind of ride together. Both the streets and senior services transportation departments are under budget year to date for expenses. And the current available street fund balance at the end of May was right at $5.2 million. Our sanitation fund revenues are $3,000 ahead of budget year to date, $8,000 more than the previous year. And their operating expenses are $19,000 under budget year to date, $50,000 more than the prior year. And their personnel expenses are $115,000 under budget year to date and $22,000 more than the previous year. Current available sanitation fund balance at the end of May was $1.9 million. No changes in the other funds other than police and fire fund. Those tax revenues, from that public safety tax are $162,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $31,000 more than the previous year. No change in the capital improvement fund or the FEMA grant fund, and the ARPA fund has been removed from the reports because it's got a zero balance as of the end of December. So, just wanted to give you guys some other updates from the finance department, and I didn't put this on the slide, but I know you guys received the 2019 audit at the last council meeting, and I was not here, so if I need to answer any questions about that, I'm more than happy to do so. Our 2020 actuarial valuation for the pension is almost complete. We have a draft. We should have a final this week. And our engagement for 2020 and 2021's audits has been signed, and we're putting together all of the information for the request list. It's a little different from the other auditors, so I'm kind of having to reorganize files and put it in the format that they have requested it in. But they'll be on site July 11th for a week, possibly 2 weeks. We'll be doing testing for both years, kind of side by side, and I'm going to try to have the report ready by the time they get there for 20, so that we can wrap 20 really quickly and then turn around and start working on 21's report. And then other update, working on our software implementation with OpenGov. We've got those 2 on-site work sessions scheduled now for July and August, and our go-live date for the finance portion of the software is August 22nd. So we are chugging along.
Thank you. Was there any discussion? Councilmember Mosley?
Let me talk about the animal services here. I'm trying to get a grasp on all this. I've been out of town a heck of a lot with family business here the last few months. As far as the animal services go, I know there's been some changes since a problem was identified over at Maumelle Friends of the Animals, and we're now accounting for adoption fees and donations, correct?
Yeah, the Animal Services Department started doing the adoptions for the first time in late November, early December. So they weren't previously handling the adoptions at all. The applications, everything else was going through MFOA. So that's really what changed. And so then the city began recording the adoption fees at that time.
So we had farmed out the adoption process to MFOA. Are you familiar with all that stuff that went on before December?
No.
Okay.
I know what.
I'm glad you answered
I know what
that
we
one.
put into place in December.
Okay. Could you ask your new audit firm to do an internal control review of the Animal Services Department, the cash handling, and all the accounting controls therewith?
Yeah, we can ask them to target that specific department. They follow the cash handling procedures that the entire city follows, so they will do multiple departments in their testing. They basically will take a transaction and follow it all the way through and see if we're following our policy. So I can make the request that they specifically do that one.
Please do that. Thank you. As far as the amount of money that's in the general fund balance over the required amount, it's like $4,794,000. We're looking much better than we did 6 months ago, I think, when we were still below the legal requirement. How much of that is the COVID money? Just ballpark.
We haven't appropriated $2.6 million, but we also haven't spent all of that that's been appropriated. So, you know, you could say at least $2.6 million of that could be related to ARPA. It's not exact, though, because your fund balance you're looking at is what is currently spent or encumbered on a purchase order, right? So
Okay.
we have things that you have now appropriated that is not necessarily on a PO or spent yet.
Okay.
I did make some transfers in June to move some of those appropriations into a grant fund so we can manage where you appropriated a grant match. We've moved that over. So the June It'll go down a little bit just because we moved some of that money. But until some or all of what you've appropriated gets spent, it's not necessarily gonna be a direct tie to that fund balance. I will say one thing though, just, if you look at page, I'm looking at my draft that doesn't have page numbers, hold on. It's the general fund statement of revenue and expenses is the one I'm looking at. 1, 2, 3, 4, probably page 5. Of the financial report, you'll see that at the beginning of the year, the available fund balance over the required minimum reserve was right at 4.4 million, and then with the rollover POs that happened, it was right at 3.5 million. So of your, if you assume that 2.6 of that was, you know, related to ARPA, or even the 3.7, so it
That's close enough.
yeah.
Thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Is there any additional discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financial statement.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is the procedural motion. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We have no unfinished business, so the first item of new business is Resolution 2022-34 regarding surplus property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-34. A resolution to approve the disposal of city surplus property.
Thank you. This is to dispose of a 2010 Dodge Charger that the police department owns. It has about 130,000 miles on it, and they believe the cost to continue to maintain that vehicle would outweigh the value. The anticipated price at auction is $3,000.
Motion to approve resolution 2022-34.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, just for clarification, there's just one vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because the next line down talks about each of the vehicles, blah, 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 so, but I think that's probably no big deal. I just want to make sure that was clarified. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Say yes.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next order of business is Resolution 2022-35, amending the 2022 general fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-35. A resolution to amend the 2022 general fund budget.
All right, this is the budget resolution that I told y'all was coming. I've asked Liz in Finance and Doreen in HR to come down and explain what's going on.
So, when we originally scoped our new finance software, we included payroll in it. Obviously, that was a need of the city. The vendor that we're using for the finance software and getting into all of their rollouts with the software kind of discovered that their payroll module really just wasn't gonna cut it. Which I have to say, I really appreciate them acknowledging that versus trying to push a product onto us that wasn't going to work. So as a result of that, they have instead partnered with UKG, which is the merged companies of the Ultimate Group and Kronos. They merged several years ago to create one big payroll company. It's one of the largest payroll companies in the country. And are offering, they've integrated that payroll solution to OpenGov and the financial suite. And with it, it's a full suite HRIS system, which handles everything from time and attendance to onboarding, open enrollment, kind of all the way through the entire process. It creates a employee self-service portal, which right now we don't have any of that. We have lots of paper. And so, what that also means is that anytime somebody needs something, we have to go pull copies of paper. So whether it's a W-2 copy or a check stub or whatever, we're having to manually go back in and pull those records and print them off and hand them to people. Timekeeping, payroll just itself is all paper from all of the departments and then HR enters and keys all of the time into payroll. And so not only is it time consuming, anytime you insert humans into processes like that, we have a chance for errors, which we really try to proof it and double check it 20 times and cut down on that kind of stuff, but it can happen. So we're really pleased with the solution that they've offered us. It really takes the city forward and to the next level, as will the rest of the software packages. But on the human resources front, it will free both the finance and HR departments up to focus on more important things that they need to be working on. Doreen can speak to some of that. And then also our departments spend a lot of time doing HR and payroll related functions, particularly the supervisors. And so we feel like it'll free up a lot of their time to allow them to focus on the work that they're doing for the city. So the budget resolution is the year-over-year costs for what we've got right now and what we had budgeted. They're giving us some discounts for the next several years because they're not providing the payroll solution. All of that year-over-year costs are going to be about the same. We may experience a little bit of savings. There's some additional savings we didn't even put on this memo. So the real thing that you're looking at today is the budget amendment for this year for the implementation costs, which we would need to sign an agreement now to get implemented by January of 2023. So that's the summary. And Doreen, if you want to speak more to from the HR perspective.
It will free up a tremendous amount of time for a number of stakeholders. Every department director is responsible for calculating their payroll. A lot of our departments have different timekeeping systems. We'll be able to consolidate all of that. And the end result is going to be better customer service for me, because I consider our employees my customer, and that's very important to me. So I'll be able to focus on audits and training. We need copious amounts of training that we're really not getting right now just because this is such a laborious effort. In doing timekeeping, I think we've got a couple of department directors here. I think police and fire can attest to how much time it will save for them. Their payroll is one of the most complicated with their overtime. Right now, fire has a 21-day payroll, and right now they're manually calculating that. We have an office administrator that literally sits down with a calendar and looks manually at the pay period before and the pay period where they are now to calculate overtime. When I've asked them to quantify how much time that is, nobody can really give me a definite answer because nobody has the luxury of closing their door and really being able to quantify how much time it takes each department to process payroll. I'd like to say something really brilliant and intelligent, like let's get into the 21st century, but that's probably not the audience for that. But it's honestly how I feel. We are really just spending a lot of time on administrative functions when I should be serving our employees, and our employees should be serving our residents. Particularly being cloud-based would be phenomenal. We've experienced a lot of server issues. As a matter of fact, the Public Works server was down for several days, and they couldn't even get to payroll. So it was a mad dash, given, yesterday was a holiday. So now we've got a server down, a holiday, and now we have to manually key in a tremendous amount of data in a short amount of time and try to take the human out of the human error part of it. So for us, it would be a tremendous asset to have the software. Any questions that I can ask or answer for you all?
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on Resolution 2022-35? Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, my previous, I've pretty much always had a policy of never voting for mid-year budget additions unless it was just an emergency. And we've had quite a few, but some of them are related to the COVID money, which is kind of understandable since we didn't know what the rules were on that back at budget time. Are there more things like that are going to be coming down the pike, or is this kind of the last of them until our next budget meeting?
More things like?
Budget resolutions for software and iPads and all that sort of thing we've been having.
So what we have, I assume there's going to be more budget resolutions throughout the year. I'm not sitting on any at the moment. This is an issue that came up because the folks that we contracted with said they couldn't provide the service that they contracted with us to do. And so I think this one does fit a little bit in that emergency category of we've been onboarding now with the new financial suite for a year.
We onboarded the citizen services side of the modules first, and that went live last year, and then we've been working on the finance side of it since then. So probably since August of last year, we've really been working on the finance side of it.
And then as it has come down to them not being able to provide the service that we contracted with, them providing an alternate way for us to do that. We don't get it at the same cost because we need a different implementation fee. And then, of course, we have to go through the process of scouting out numerous different services, letting HR and finance battle it out as they each had different needs, flesh out.
And we did.
What's that?
And we did.
They did.
Now that we're on the record, yes, we did.
And fleshing out the one that we thought would work the best, getting quotes on it to meet us, and then here we are. So we've known about this one for a little while, which is why we've brought it up the last couple of meetings. I'm not sitting on any other budget resolutions that I anticipate at this time.
Good. Thank you. I'll probably vote for this one, but I reserve the right to go back to my old policy. So,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I'll just add from a finance perspective, because I'm always looking at numbers. This would put us with, if we were looking at the 2022 budget, a fund appropriation out of the general fund, not related to ARPA, at $122,000 for the year. And our current, just our county sales tax alone is already $180,000 ahead of budget. So I also feel like we have the revenues so far this year to cover it.
That's a good comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on this item?
Motion to approve Resolution 2022-35. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item of business is Resolution 2022-36, authorizing permitting fees for boring and excavations. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-36, authorizing permitting fees for boring, excavations, and cuts in the rights-of-way of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Thank you. I know y'all are aware of the boring and excavations that are going on across town through the installation by several different high-speed internet providers. As we have gone through this year and encountered an unprecedented number of problems, we've completely revamped what we do during the permitting process. Long story short, in past, the permitting fee was $25, and what the city reviewed essentially amounted to, we looked at the location, made sure that they were bonded, and gave them a permit and said, good luck, have fun. when the project was wrapping up, we had our construction ops coordinator and public works who would go and make sure that any issues that were created were being finalized and solved. That process has changed just a little bit. I've asked Scott Grummer to come down and talk a little bit about what we're doing differently with those, with that permitting process. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor mentioned before, our process was very simple. It took a matter of just a few minutes to process the permit, and it was off, and we really didn't see it anymore. Our hands didn't touch it, except for the Public Works Construction Ops Coordinator. So now this is being touched by multiple areas of the city. Our permits intake is verifying the applications when they come in. It goes to the planning department where we have GIS inputs. We have a actual GIS map now that we track all the current excavations around the city, so we know exactly what's active, what's on hold, what's completed, what's pending. We've also included pre-construction meetings where we pull the contractor on these large projects together with utility companies so that we can discuss among all the utilities in the ground what the protocols are and how to protect and try to prevent those. Although accidents happen, we actually had one down in Maumelle Valley Estates today. Another water line got hit. We're receiving a tremendous number of increased phone calls, so we have a lot more over the phone and staff time on that. Our staff resources in the field, we now have implemented both on Public Works as well as in my department, permits and planning, to be in the field monitoring and reviewing, making sure that all protocols are being followed by the contractors. And but then the worst part, I say the worst part, the more costly to the city is the cost of the infrastructure. When these utilities come in, sometimes they have to do street cuts, and it can be very damaging to that, as well as drainage and other things. So overall, from a cost standpoint, when you look at $25 per cost, and I did a calculation, currently we have almost 300,000 lineal feet of pending excavations in the city of Maumelle that has not been approved yet, just by one telecom. That's not all. I spoke with both the director of North Little Rock Public Works as well as Little Rock Public Works to find out what their processes were on fees. And they're charging upwards of $1 a lineal foot. So you could think about the revenue that we could receive at that, but we realized that that would be too high of a cost increase from just $25 per permit. But I ran the numbers, and on this one telecom at almost 300,000 lineal feet, our current fee structure would net us about $1,675 versus $72,739. So it could be a significant increase. And honestly, that would only cover a fraction of the cost of the time that we're spending on this, from my time to help to develop all these processes that we have in place, new applications as well as inspections. And I'll also mention that when this started, the permit process, some large projects got through the process before we were able to implement this. So a lot of the damages and a lot of the challenges that we're having right now is trying to close out that, but all of these new projects coming in will be set up in this new system. And with the iPads that were approved, of course, these fee structures would help us cover the cost of that when we come back to the budget and other things. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, I'd like to thank Mr. Grummer for his time on updating that schedule. The old schedule of just flat $25 fee, that was very outdated and antiquated, and I agree that it was definitely time to upgrade that. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-36.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Just a curious question. There's no part of this that's retrospective, is there? Retroactive?
Well, not retroactive for current approved permits that are underway.
It's only the fees going forward.
That's correct. And I'll also state that I think some of our existing utilities like CAW and Entergy, their franchise agreements may exempt them from the fee. This is mainly going to be with the telecoms because they're the ones that have the large infrastructure where they're actually bringing in all new infrastructure, and ultimately that's what's causing us most of the work.
Good, you read my mind. Okay, thank you.
All right, any additional discussion? The motion on the floor is to adopt Resolution 2022-36. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That concludes new business. So we'll move on to mayor's comments. Down in the FYI, we included a memo from Chief Pickard on the crime statistics over the last 5 years. If you haven't had a chance, take a look at that. Long story short, this year, violent crimes, the rolling 5-year average, and this is through the end of May, the 5-year average for this time of year was 45. We're at 37. Crimes against person, the 5-year average for this time period was 73. We're at 62. The crimes against property was at 235. We're higher than that at 244. And then the crimes against society were at 84, and we're now at 76. So we're trending lower in each of those categories other than the crimes against property, which I know the police department has been focusing especially hard on that. So if you haven't taken a look at that memo, please do that. And we will move on to council member comments. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the discussion item we had under council member comments last week in regard to the problems that are going on over at MFOA, and I was very concerned about that as far as just how informal the procedures were between the city and MFOA, and that we might have in some way contributed to this problem. I have not had time to dig into this yet like I would like. I've been out of town a heck of a lot on some family issues. And I've been meaning to get with the mayor and the city attorney and the city finance lady, make sure I understand everything that was going on before and since. And, but I fortunately, I think there's some city residents who've been looking in this also. So some of my questions are some of the same questions other people had. One thing I'd like to ask you, in the last meeting, I asked you to, I thought the city should step back from MFOA until they resolve all their problems and some of these court cases are concluded. And I think, and I've talked to several constituents who thought the same thing. And I think some of them have actually called you and voiced their opinions. Have you actually made a decision? What have you made a decision on that? Have you decided to step away and sever that for now, or?
Yeah, so backing up a little bit, when we first heard the allegations, it was just a rumor at the start. We immediately put a pause on all of the operations that were occurring with MFOA. We just put it on pause pending a criminal investigation and also an internal investigation as to the sorts of questions that you're asking regarding monies, what is the nature of the relationship. The city attorney worked with Chris Davis, the animal services supervisor, to come up with a form agreement that we could use either with MFOA or other rescue organizations that set a very bright line rule. We want to work with organizations that want to help us help the animals, but we didn't want the type of intertwining that was occurring before. It's rife with a whole lot of potential for problems. This is one of them. So we have an agreement that's in place with MFOA and with several other rescue organizations that sets a very bright line rule as to what's going on. So with regards to the strength of that wall, I don't have any concerns that there would be any issues with public funds, with any the concerns that were addressed, we've protected against, if that makes sense. And so essentially, the agreement, as we have now, says that these rescue organizations, if approved, and we've come to an agreement with you, is able to help us find places for those animals to be adopted or fostered out or get them into homes. So if the council were to decide y'all didn't want the city to go forward with that agreement, that's understandable. I just think we've built a wall that prevents any sort of these issues from occurring. Madam City Attorney, I see your buttons.
I just wanted to address a few things. First, I know there have been a number of questions about how the relationship was prior to our learning of the issues that were going on in November of last year. I've done some research about humane societies and their interrelationship with cities, which is quite different than the way the city interacts with a lot of nonprofits. The statute is 20-19-101 that discusses humane societies and legislative findings related to those, and permits the city to have an interrelationship with the Humane Society in the discharge of the governmental function of protecting health, safety, and general welfare through prevention of cruelty to animals. So that was enacted back in 1939, and so it does set up a relationship that's different than I think what we're used to seeing, and how the city, maybe relates to other just general charitable organizations within the city. MFOA has been in existence since 1992. Now, obviously, I wasn't in office in 1992. I think I just graduated from high school. So it's been around a long time, and there's, to some extent, it predates the current facility. I mean, that we have now. I'm not sure what type of facility we had at that time, but it's quite possible we had nothing. So these city services, to some extent, grew up alongside humane societies, and that's why the legislature allowed cities to work in close relationship with them over the years. There's an Attorney General opinion letter. It's opinion number 2003-047, and it discusses a situation, I believe it was in Forest City, where the Forest City wanted to lease a piece of property very cheaply from it was just outside the city limits, and pay to construct a shelter that would essentially serve a nonprofit, because that was their humane society. And the opinion writer goes through all of the different considerations that you would constitutionally, and gives the opinion that yes, this is probably allowed because it is a public function, and the state statute is there spelling out that a city is allowed to do that and work alongside and in connection with a humane society. So when we all look back in it, with all of this hindsight, we go, this was kind of a strange relationship that we had, but that's the background for why it was the way it was. So, and it went along, and as far as I know, there were never problems until we learned of this situation. Obviously, there were problems before that, but no one knew of any issues or irregularities. And as far as we know, prior to 2019, there were no issues or irregularities that I'm aware of anyway. So that being the case, we did take a look at how we were going to go forward. How are we going to work with this nonprofit? How are we going to work with other rescue organizations? And the purpose, and I've brought, it's the same agreement, it's formatted better, but like we have one with Care for Animals, Inc. also. It's the same agreement, and what it allows is for them to take animals under certain circumstances. And here are the 3 criteria. The animal's been in custody of Maumelle Animal Services 60 or more days. So we've had an animal a while, it's not getting adopted, it's not getting seen, it's not getting attention. B, there's insufficient space for the animal at the Maumelle Animal Services shelter as determined by the supervisor of animal services. So we're full, right? We're looking at having to put animals down because we don't have any place to put them. That would be another situation. C, the animal's been designated by Maumelle Animal Services personnel as rescue transfer only due to a medical issue or temperament. So we get a dog that has a condition that we're not going to be able to pay for the veterinary care that it needs because it's, you know, extensive, and it might be a situation where otherwise we would have to, again, put the dog down. If there's a rescue organization that's willing to take the dog, or, you know, has a temperament issue and they want to try to rehabilitate it, those kind of situations, that's where these rescue organizations are going to step in. So, you know, quite a different relationship than what we've had in the past, where we were basically facilitating adoptions for MFOA, but they were handling all of the application paperwork. It was their application. They were reviewing the applications and approving adoptions and all those types of things. That's all changed. The agreement may be terminated at any time by giving the other party written notice. So if, for example, we for some reason have a question about, you know, the background of somebody as far as them being a violent person or something like that, and we don't think the animal should be in contact with them, we still have the right to terminate that agreement at any time. So just wanted to kind of give everybody all of that background on what's going on.
Thank you very much.
I've still got some questions. Let me ask you this. As far as how this has worked in the past, have we had these agreements with other rescue groups or just MFOA? Have they been the sole
To
group?
my knowledge, we've never had a written agreement with these rescue organizations. There may have been times when Chris worked with the rescue organizations on dogs that were, you know, had high medical costs or were going to have we got too crowded or something like that, but I'm not aware of a written agreement with them. Now I think we have 4 or 5. So I can't.
Well, that's good. That's good. I think you're taking the steps in the right direction, but I still very firmly believe that we should sever relations with MFOA for 6 months or so until these court cases are done. It just looks bad. The fact that have you had a chance, Mr. Mayor? There's a email here on our desk from Patty Robinson. She's looked into all this, and she thinks that some funds have gone incorrectly to MFOA before December of 2021. Have you had a chance to look at this?
No, sir. I just had it on my desk when you had it.
Okay. That concerns me. That would mean that perhaps some donations and adoption fees were transferred or just given to MFOA without going through our accounting process and things like that. If this is in fact, but I'm going to give you a chance. I'm not going to badger you over this of something you haven't read, but take a look at this. I'd be interested in whether this is accurate or not.
What she says is that it was illegal. Is that the arrangement prior to us changing it in November was illegal? That's my understanding of what she's saying. What I'm saying is 20-19-101 allowed it. It was not illegal.
So you're saying that is it's not illegal. That it was okay for money to just be shunted off to these other folks.
Well, I don't know that I would say it was shunted off. Maumelle Animal Services worked cooperatively with Maumelle Friends of the Animals at that time as the primary humane society, the only one I know of that was devoted solely to the city of Maumelle, and that Maumelle Friends of the Animals basically adopted out these animals as they came into the care of Maumelle Animal Services. So it was they were the adopting agency at that time.
Okay. Like I say, I have not had a chance to dig into this. This is all foreign to me. It just sounds sounds bad, smells bad, and I would ask you to reconsider apparently there's 4 other entities here that are ready to take over for somebody that's fallen down on in the situation, so.
I think it is bad. When we heard the rumors, we conducted a full-scale criminal investigation that led to 2 felony charges. I don't know of too many times, maybe Chief Pickard can think of a time or two, where we heard a rumor that a crime had maybe occurred without a victim coming forward, where we so zealously prosecuted. It is wrong. People have they are understandably and justifiably outraged at that. I think, though, that it is very important to recognize who the bad actors were and then who the victims were. I think that the animals, first and foremost, are being lost in this discussion. It is all about politics and taking jabs at different people. And I'm not suggesting that you at all, Councilman Mosaic, because I don't think that's it, or your motives. But you have this going on. You've got just the public will, people who have donated money that they thought were going to a good cause, and that money didn't go there. And you also have the Maumelle Friends of the Animals, which are the group of volunteers that have been working for years tirelessly to help the animals out. They were victims too. Obviously not the perpetrators that committed the crime that we've filed felony charges against. They're victims as well. And ultimately, my goal is to make sure that we have safe streets without, animals running all over the place, that the animals that are in our care and custody are being treated properly, and that we're finding homes for them so that we're not unnecessarily euthanizing them. So when you look at all of that combined with the agreement, which means that the operations that the city has currently with the Maumelle Friends of the Animals leaves no room for any misappropriation of public funds. We've severed that intertwined relationship, and so I don't feel uncomfortable partnering with them to help ensure that the animals are being rescued out properly. That said, you're right, we do have other rescue organizations that are helping out. I don't think it's the end of the world if you pause it. I just think that if we sever that, what we're saying is that the facts don't matter, it's just the way it looks. It looks bad. We've taken proper precautions, we've zealously prosecuted this, we've done everything to make sure that we're doing this by the books, doing it right, and focusing on the animals and public funds. So I'm not going to throw a fit if the council says we don't want to go forward with that. I just don't think it's necessary, in my opinion.
What's anybody else think?
Councilmember Holt has had his button pushed for quite a while, so.
I've gone to sleep,
Yeah.
and now I hate to interrupt y'all's conversation. Mr. Mayor, there's some things that we do know. I have the file from Circuit Court, and there is a fact. Felonies charges have been filed, and there are 2 people whose court will come up, the date will come up November the 18th. I'm not going to get into the tit for tat and who said. I have talked and spent hours on this to the point of nauseam, and that's the truth. But I don't want to get into all that. Here's the thing about all this. The city, if we don't, when this trial begins, when the news media gets a hold of this, we all know it's going to be a nightmare, and they're going to have a feast. Before we start doing anything with the Friends of the Animals, we've got to get our own house in shape first. And if we sit here and we act like that we are sort of swaying here or swaying there, or we're not really sure what we want to do, or we're sort of partnering and not partnering, we're going to look like that we are a weak, nimble, goody two-shoe government that does not want to make any decisions. We, as city fathers and city representatives, have got to have the courage to make a statement and say, it is gonna taste bad, but here's what we're gonna do. We're either going to support the citizens of this city, the constituents. I too have had phone calls. You know, I attended the other day the meeting of the Friends of the Animal, just to sit there and didn't say a word. And during the course, it was a very combative meeting, to say the least. And during the meeting, there was a lady sitting behind me, and I don't remember what she said. I don't know if it was a question or a statement, but she ended it with, well, I have the police report. And Mr. Booth, the president, said, yes, everybody in China has the police report. So the point I'm making is, everybody knows it's out, and it's not doing good. I had one of my constituents call, and he said, people are really mad about this. So it's not that we need to run and hide, but we need to be ready to know what we want to do, good, bad, or indifference. It is the city that we must protect, and let everybody else protect themselves in their own way. And I'm not involved in should we do this or should we do that, but we've got to come together. Whether you want to call a special meeting of this council one night and let's come down here, bring supper, it may last a while, as we used to do when we had the budget. But at any rate, this is not funny. It is serious, and we had better get a hold of it and make a decision about it, or we are going to be one poor looking bunch of people. And that's what I have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Holt. Thank you for, I know you've been looking into this an awful lot and trying to get to the bottom of it. Thank you for that. Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, at the end of the day, there are a lot of Maumelle people that have supported MFOA, and the mayor alluded to that. You know, I think one of the neat things about this city is the care for animals that so many people show. I mean, if there's a lost dog, that poor dog is all over Facebook before it has a chance to know what happened. There's a lot of people out looking for him. I mean, dogs don't get lost for very long around here, unless there's a friend of mine's dog got lost for a few days. That's another matter. It took a trip to North Little Rock. But everybody wants to help the animals, and I know MFOA has had a lot of volunteers put in a lot of time serving them. And at the end of the day, there have been 2 people that have been accused of a crime, and they will have their day in court. But I don't feel like we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater in this case. I feel very comfortable with the safeguards that the city has put into place, especially with these contracts with MFOA or with any other care organization. So yeah, I would agree that mistakes were made in the past, and the nonprofits should have been looking at their books more regularly. That was a huge oversight, and I'm hoping that's being corrected. But I feel very comfortable as a city that the steps that the mayor and the city attorney have taken to craft these arrangements, it's about helping the animals. I think at the end of the day, that's what people want to do, and I feel comfortable with that. There may come a point when I'm not comfortable with that, but I don't feel like we should punish those that did nothing wrong and want to continue helping the animals in this community. So I think those 2 individuals will have their day in court, and we'll see what happens there. But I don't think we should sever that relationship at this point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, one of the things I've been worried about with that situation is that I've heard, it's just rumors, I'm not sure of all this because I haven't asked the city finance director or anybody else yet. I haven't had time to. But I think there was a lot of shared cash or shared security at the shelter, which makes me very uncomfortable. Is that, can I ask the city finance director to come up and share how things used to be?
Liz, come on down.
Mr. Davis could probably speak to this better than I can, but he's not here, so I will tell you what I know, and discovered in late November of last year. I'll first speak to the city finances. We have a receipt book at the Animal Services Department. It's always been there. It's pre-numbered receipts. And it has boxes to mark. At that time, we were only collecting the animal registration tags and boarding fees, owner surrender fees, stuff like that. And a donation if somebody said, I really want to donate this to the city. So that was the city funds. There's a cash box, there's a receipt book that matches up, and all of that ties and follows city procedure. Always has. There was another cash box at Animal Services that the adoption fees and fees that were for MFOA went to, and then someone from MFOA would come pick those up. They maintained a receipt book for MFOA as well of what they collected, so that anything they collected was turned over. I don't know that any of us were aware of that arrangement until late November, and as soon as we did become aware of that arrangement, the practice was stopped.
Okay, I was going to say, I've got a little accounting background, as you're aware. Those procedures just sound like there's no control whatsoever. So I'm glad you didn't know that was going on.
Let's just say, so the meeting was very interesting when the first person came to tell me that they'd heard this rumor. It started with me and chief of staff, and then you follow up with a few questions, you learn a little bit more. Before you know it, I'm grabbing Liz to say, does this sound as fishy to you as it does to me? And the answer is yes. We continue on for a little while, bring the city attorney in. By the end of this meeting, we had the chief of police, we had animal control officers who secured the money box, the receipts, immediately brought it up from Animal Services. It was inventoried with multiple witnesses, logged in to the safe, held in that location, and we just went running, yes. So that is not acceptable for the city under any circumstances to be accepting other entities' money, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. That stopped before I had a chance to tell my wife, oh my gosh, you'll have no idea what I've just found out, right?
It was also the day before Thanksgiving, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the donation, were there receipts for donations, and what was the other thing that was,
All of the
adoption
donations
fees?
were going to the nonprofit. They were not coming to the city.
Okay, so they were not being logged into the city books.
No, they were in the receipt books for MFOA.
Okay, but according to the procedure that was in place at the time, they gave that money to MFOA.
The donations and
Yeah.
the adoption fees were all
Yeah,
going
but
to.
the city attorney doesn't think that was illegal, according to the law.
I mean, obviously, this is not an area that, had I known, we probably would have decided this is how it should be set up. But
Okay.
20-19-101 discusses I mean, I could read it to you, but it basically declares that humane societies are serving a public function, and that the appropriation, even for public funds, for the use of humane societies and the maintenance and operation of shelters for stray, diseased, neglected, and other animals, and the protection of the public from disease among such animals, is a public use of the funds in the discharge of a government function. I don't think it's unusual. I will say, I think there are other cities who, according to AG opinions anyway, were using the same kind of structure with their humane society.
And I agree with that. I also think that there probably could have been a better way of handling the funds.
Oh, yeah.
And that's putting it very mildly. I think my reaction that day was, no,
Yeah.
we can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, did the staff there know that that was, not okay? No. Did past finance directors even know it was happening? I don't know. I can't speak to that. I certainly didn't know about it.
So what we know is that the public funds, the money that was coming to the city for city functions, was kept in a separate box with with numbered receipts, and we had the city's control. What MFOA didn't have was their controls on it, and the city's negligence in that was not ensuring that the group that we were partnering with had those controls in place, and we shouldn't have been taking that. In my opinion, we shouldn't have been taking any money for an outside organization.
There was probably a lot of cash there, right? It wasn't, cash checks, things like that?
It wasn't, I don't think it was ever built up to a large amount at any given time. And it was kept securely at the facility as city funds are. And it was kept separately from city funds with receipt books on both funds. So, I mean, I think the staff, while I don't agree with what they were doing, I think they were doing a decent job of making sure that it was at least separated and that they tracked it separately and had separate receipt books and things like that.
There's just room for money to go missing from one courier to a deposit.
After it left the shelter, yes.
Yes, so.
And that's the MFOA funds. Right?
Yeah, that's beyond my purview, but it's something that was not good. I'm going to make a motion that we suspend relations with MFOA for 6 months and reevaluate it at the time 6 months are up. Did you hear the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So is your motion to terminate the current agreement?
Terminate the current agreement for 6 months and then reconsider after 6 months.
I have a motion and a second to terminate the current agreement. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to make sure I clarify with the understanding. So if I walked into Maumelle and Service said, I have $100 I want to donate to the city of Maumelle, it would go into one lockbox, which followed all our city rules and did not go into MFOA. But if I came in and said, I have $100 I want to donate, and I can donate to MFOA, which will go to all this right now, that's the money we're talking about. There was not mixture between donating between specifically for the city and specifically for MFOA.
Yes, correct.
Based on what she just said, I think it wasn't necessarily a lockbox for each one or separate.
No, it was separate, and there were separate lock boxes, and it was the MFOA box.
But the donations did go to MFOA.
If you donated to MFOA?
No, if you donated to the city, it would have gone to MFOA.
No.
No, if you said, I want to donate to the city, the funds would have gone to the city. That didn't happen very often. So most of the times they said, I want to donate to, and MFOA was the charitable organization that was accepting the most donations, right? It was probably a little unclear to people when they went to the shelter which organization they were donating to, which is part of the reason why we put such clear controls in place and such separation in it. Again, it's not necessarily how I would have handled it, but most people were not coming in and saying, I want to donate to the city general fund, which is really what a donation to the city is.
Again, I represent the residents. That's what I was elected to do, is represent residents of my ward. I don't represent the city. And so that's why I'm asking all these questions tonight. And,
absolutely.
And I think it would show that we're serious about the fact that things weren't done well before and that are going to be done well now, to go ahead and suspend them for 6 months. Just suspend that relationship for 6 months and then look at it again. There's other organizations that can step in, and I think this would show the city that we're serious about it.
I have just one more question.
Councilmember Holt?
I have just for Ms. Matthews, one more question for me. What specific period are we talking about that when the MFOA collected the fees and when they didn't? I don't want, that's not a trick question. I have the email that you responded to Ms. Robertson, and for 2020, it says that we have no record exists, and it says all donations and adoption fees were collected by MFOA, and that during the year of 2020. And it's my understanding that that didn't actually stop until November of 2021 when it stopped and we found out about all this. And at that point, at least I, as a member of the council, was not informed that any kind of an issue. I didn't know about it until a couple of weeks ago. I have an issue with not having been informed, but I want also, what period do we stop letting MFOA collect all the funds?
The day that the city became aware of the allegations, which was possibly the day before Thanksgiving. It was right at the end of November of 2021.
So we don't have records for 2020, but we went up to the end of 21. Do we have records that tell us what we did and didn't have
Yes.
up to that point during 2021?
Starting at the end of November.
So that's to say, for 2020 and to the end of November of 21, we do not have records. Am I right on that?
Not on the city finance books. The city was not charging adoption fees. And it's the practice that had been in place since the 90s possibly. We don't really know how far along that relationship.
The question, Councilmember Holt, was basically asking for MFOA's receipt books, which we do not keep.
Right.
We throw those away, so there are no receipts.
They were provided to MFOA with the funds.
Oh, you gave them to MFOA, but,
Because it was their cash and their receipt book.
okay,
And
so that was controlled to benefit them.
Yes.
to benefit them with their money, we shouldn't have been doing that at all. But we were not controlling their money, we were just accepting it, if that makes sense. So when there's a request for the receipts that the donations to a third party are asked for, we don't have those receipts. Those receipts belong to and were given to that organization.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I did not sign in, but could I speak for MFOA?
Yes, if you could state your name and address, if you could come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes, please.
My name is Charlene Akins. I've been a member of MFOA for over 20 years. I've been a resident of Maumelle for 22 years. And we're talking about, it sounds as though you're thinking that MFOA has been taking all this money, but nobody has mentioned the fact that MFOA paid all of the vet bills for all of the animals that were spayed and neutered, sick, cared for, heartworm treatment, and all of that. It wasn't just MFOA money. We were spending it on the animals. And I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, Mr. Mosley.
I don't know that I've got another question right now. Are you on the MFOA board?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I don't have any more questions right now for you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Joe?
No, I am interested, as an interested party, to know, that's why I attended the meeting. I said nothing. I was just there to listen.
I know, I
So,
sat next to you.
I would like to continue that practice. It's an open meeting, right?
Good, yes,
I shall be there.
please do.
Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that in the past, we've had some procedures that I assume about everybody here would disagree with. Now, I think what I heard, and this is probably directed more to the city attorney and, of course, the mayor. Am I correct in assuming that we now have developed a new agreement by which we have roadblocks and our barriers to the bad procedures in the future, at this time and in the future? Is that correct?
We no longer collect money for any nonprofit organization or city employees don't collect any money for a nonprofit organization, and we handle our own vetting expenses for the most part, so that we don't have, the city has a ledger item for those adoption fees to come in and for vetting expenses. So yes, that's all been changed. All of our rescue agreements discuss the situations that I've talked about earlier, as well as situations where maybe they'll take an animal to a radio station or a news program or something like that. But yes, we do not adopt through another organization anymore.
Okay, thank you. I'm not through. I guess I'm having a hard, and has MFOA been given a copy of this new agreement for their approval?
Yes,
Have they approved it?
yes,
Okay. So it's right now, we have it in place and it's a done deal. And that provides us certain roadblocks against these bad procedures.
well, it can be terminated at any time by either party,
Okay.
but yes, it's been signed by both parties.
Okay. And I don't have a problem with termination clause in there for either party. I don't know what's to be gained in putting a boycott against MFOA at this point. They've agreed to a new agreement that takes care of these problems with procedures. So needless to say, I can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any, I've got a motion and a second on the floor to terminate the current agreement with MFOA. Is there any additional discussion? Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned for 20 years in the military is when you make a knee-jerk reaction, normally you're going to regret that later. There's a lot we don't know yet. For example, what's going to happen to these animals? We have other groups. Do they have the same capability to take away the same amount of animals? Or are we going to make a call now and end up euthanizing some? To me, that's unacceptable.
I asked, Chris Davis had a medical procedure, so he's been out the last few days. I did get an opportunity to talk with him today, and I asked him that exact question. He feels as though there are other organizations that he can work with so that they don't expect a massive increase of euthanasia or having to put animals down. He seems to believe that that while he would, I don't want to speak for him, my takeaway from what he said was that that we'd like to continue working with them if can be, but that it is not, there's not catastrophic consequences for not doing that in terms of the animal welfare. Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, I'd just like to comment about how I thought it was a good job that both yourself and City Attorney Krebs did about getting on this matter as soon as aware of. In many cases, it sounds like a lot of this had already been addressed before we were even aware of this. And so the urge to do something about it has already been fairly well taken care of. So I want to compliment you for being proactive on this and handling this as soon as you're aware of, here we have criminal proceedings going on about a matter that we didn't even know about until 2 weeks ago. So I think that was a good job on both your parts there. And I don't think that we really need, myself, that we need to do a boycott, as others have commented, would be a knee-jerk reaction when we've already got new safeguards in place.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I didn't want to bring this up, but I'm going to say it for Alderman Saunders' benefit in case he wasn't aware. But from what I understand, and MFO people can tell me if it's true or not, but it disturbs me that I think one of the people that are facing charges are still on the MFOA board, and that just doesn't look good to be doing business with somebody that's facing criminal charges, that's in a position of leadership with a company.
Thank you, sir. Were you asking that?
Well, if that's not true, you say it's not true.
I'd like to speak for a moment.
It's up to you.
Please come to the microphone, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
My name is Barbara Spar. I live at 203 Summit Valley Circle. My other name was Whistleblower. I'm the one that talked to Chris Davis about what was going on. And from there, here we are. I am really sad to see people wanting to to punish everyone in MFOA. Yesterday, I took 5 kittens to companions for their surgeries. I came here tonight from PetSense, where I had an adoption of a cat. We do the best we can, and oh yes, I had a phone call that I haven't taken yet. The message was left about a lady that has 20 cats. She has lung cancer and is not going to survive very long, and they want to know what we can do to help. This is what we get all the time. We do the best we can with what we have. But my biggest issue right now is understanding how everyone in MFOA can be blamed for what 1 or 2 people have done. And yes, I am on the board, and when there's to be a change made in the board, everyone has to vote for that change. And if they don't, then it doesn't pass. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a motion second on the floor to terminate the current agreement with MFOA. Any additional discussion? All those in favor of terminating the agreement, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Mayor?
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
No.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
No.
Councilmember Gardner?
Nope.
Councilmember Tierney?
No.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Motion fails for, motion fails. Any additional council member comments? Madam, Councilmember Mosley?
I'm just sorry we're having to deal with this issue. We've had a couple unpleasant issues to deal with while I've been a council member, and I don't enjoy them. It really upsets me, and I'm tired of it. I would encourage the city, anything to do with accounting, anything to do with money, anything to do with handling money, I would very much encourage you to look into it and get it squared away. You know, make a flow chart, find out how things are being handled, and improve the controls, okay? I'm tired of this kind of stuff. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional council member comments? City Attorney?
No comment.
Madam City Clerk?
I do. I just want to bring everybody's attention to the meeting that's going to be held this week. It's for the All-Inclusive Playground Committee. Please come out and join us if that is of interest to you. And also, we are going to have open positions on the tree board. Please look out for those if you have any interest. They would be posted on our social media pages and on our website. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Tierney?
I got to get Ms. Timmons to give us the date and time of that meeting.
Yes, sir. It's on your agenda, June 30th from 6 p.m. until 7:30, and it'll be at the community center. It's item C under FYI.
Thank you. I just want to get that on the record.
Yes, sir.
All right. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Kim, you made it.
I know.